I'm from Minneapolis. I'm used to wearing a lot of coats to cover up weather. I'm not smart enough to take them off, so I'm not dressed smart Bali or whatever it was that Dennis was describing last night. Last presentation of the day, I would understand if people fall asleep. I'll try to do my best to keep you engaged in the process. I am going to talk about the container pipeline today, and from the perspective of a shipper in the U.S. that loads ag products into containers. And we're going to try to cover a decent amount of territory, look at the mechanics of loading, the consumption of boxes, capacity creation, execution challenges of the pipeline, talk about kind of where grain meets the box and sustainability properties of the pipeline, as long as what the competition for ag containers is comprised of. So we're just going to start with the basics. I imagine many here have received containers. I apologize for insulting your intelligence, but a couple of 101 items here. Here's a picture of how you properly load a container. Steamship lines as well as railroads like even distribution of product. They like a bulkhead material made out of cardboard, although there's new things coming out. And they want heat treated. Well, actually, heat treated is a compliance issue with many of the importing nations, but bulkhead supports of either metal or wood. Here's a picture of one of our loading facilities where we're bringing grain in from the farm or the elevators and transloading it into a box, simply conveyed from the pit into the box. Here's a picture of someone else's loading facility. A couple of distinguishing characteristics here. We load containers with either augers or conveyors. We use augers when we might want to pack denser material into a box where we cube out, or our capacity restriction is the box size, not the weight. I'm sorry? This is a picture of, where's Bo? He's out. I think I ripped this off from Bo DeLong's presentation. The distinction on this picture is this diverter sampler. We talk about sampling containers as they're being loaded. This is a stream of grain that's being sampled or pulled off as the container itself is being loaded. When a container is loaded inland, we transport that by chassis and truck to an intermodal ramp. Railroads load that onto a well car. They double stack them, and they ship that to the main ports on the coast. This is kind of a map of the major railroads in the United States and how they get from the inland ports to the main distribution ports on the coast. So when a container is loaded, typically in the United States, you're going to have a couple factors that are standard. Each container is going to be inspected before it gets loaded to make sure the stowage area is clean, there's no holes in the boxes. Usually it's inspected by a Federal Grain Inspection Service. They're the ones that are drawing the sample. Most containers have Federal Grain Inspection certified weights, and all containers have some sort of phytosanitary certificate that comes with it, basically checking for infestation. Okay, we're going to move from the mechanics of this to the pipeline capacity. We're going to talk about the boats, the boxes, and the transloaders over the last 4 or 5 years, the growth of those. We'll start first with the boats. Kind of a historical perspective of the development of steamship line container vessels over the last 50 or so years. Began this in 1960 with the average size of the vessel being able to carry about 1,700 boxes, 20-foot equivalent boxes. It seems like it's doubled every 15 to 20 years to 2006, where we had 8,000 to 9,000 TEU boats. But there's been recently explosion in the size of the container vessels that we're seeing. This Panamax term is just simply described as whether it fits through the Panama Canal or not. These ultra post-Panamax container vessels, huge, carrying 12 to 14,000 TEUs, so the capacity is growing. Here's a picture of the comparison of a huge vessel versus, I guess it would be a 2000 version here. Andy, have you guys found a parking spot for this thing yet? A few? I guess the takeaway from this for us in the ag business is, when you start getting vessels this size, it's going to alleviate some of the pressures that we experienced 2 years ago, which was largely about boat capacity, deadweight capacity. Grain is heavy. We chew up the boat capacity or the deadweight capacity quicker with grain than we do a lot of other exports. Start bringing boats on like this, we're going to start to alleviate some of the deadweight choke point for grain. The other thing about this size of vessel, it's going to require infrastructure that has high velocity. Imagine this thing pulling in the port and the speed at which you need to take off those containers to get them out inland. Also imagine when this thing pulls in, the speed at which you need to reload it. So it's going to require a lot of velocity in all the containers pointed towards it. And the port infrastructure to deal with this is massive. This chart and others have talked about kind of the order book as it relates to bulk freight. This is a Drury report talking about the order book as it is about container vessel development. Basically, you go back, about 4 years ago, to the predictions, or to today, and the predictions of next year. We're talking about close to doubling the fleet capacity. And of course, there's quite a bit of debate and argument about whether this actual construction will take place. But one thing's for sure, the construction that is going to take place is sizable, and it will be in these bigger vessels. So the good news for us ag shippers is our capacity is sure to increase. Talk about container capacity, and the global trade over the last 9 years and the prediction about the next 5 years, we've had a little bit of a blip here, and I'm sure that it was deeper than that. These are estimates made by Global Insight about 6 months ago. I'm sure that's deeper than that. But this resumption of this trend in containers that's been talked about here is very healthy for what we do. So the number of boxes that we're going to have available to reload should increase. And Andy, if I remember correctly, the turn time, or I should say the number of times a container gets turned annually is about 7 times. Is that a rough estimate? Right, depending on the trade lane, but containers usually get to move around the world about 7 times. So we should have plenty of boxes available, plenty of boats available. Let's talk about how much that's going to come to the United States. Here's a graph describing kind of the flows of container trade from Asia to the U.S. and certainly the last 7 years. Pretty good growth. I mean, 5, 10, 12%. It was forecast to be up to 20 at one point before the global economy fell out. But this is really what spurred the development of all these boats. Of course, we bottomed out here, and these guys predict that we're going to recover sometime in 2010, 2011, and I guess they're predicting we're going to flatline from there. I doubt you'll see a flatline. Volatility like this will probably continue forward, but the point is we're going to get out of this. We presume we'll get out of this this valley, and us in the United States will have a chance to load some containers again. If you kind of hone in that trade in the United States into what it means for us as container loaders, specifically what we're talking about is the containers that come to the United States and the ratio of those that get reloaded to go out of the United States is this red bar. You can see back in 2007, roughly for every 2 containers that came in to the United States, 1 was being loaded with some sort of an exportable product. And that ratio tightened up as exports grew and as imports fell. And this graph was put together in September, I think, or October of last year, and I apologize I don't have more recent data than this, but their estimates in Q4 was that, and in Q1 was that. And I'd tell you that those estimates were actually wrong. Primarily related to grain, we did not see these type of exports in 2004 because the steamship lines rates were not competitive to dry bulk freight rates. We also had just the general slowing of the economy, reducing the waste paper and the scrap metal and the plastic need. So really, we saw through the winter months quite a surplus of containers in the Midwest and really everywhere. But steamship lines did react. They lowered rates. They brought back demand to them in Q1. So now we've loaded all those boxes, but unfortunately, we don't have a lot of them coming in because the economy